Thank you very much, and what an incredible honor that our entire team of Community Renewal has been recognized for, and I want to certainly thank the Center for Christianity in Public Life. And I also want to thank my dear friend, Secretary Dalton, John Dalton. We know him as Johnny back in Shreveport. And you know what, Johnny was up here for a specific purpose, but you need to know that in a few weeks, he's going to be inducted into the Louisiana Legends Hall of Fame. And so, John, thank you for your service and for all that you and Margaret have given for so many. Thank you. Well, it's something to be a simple journeyman pastor. And by being a journeyman pastor, I share with every single heart and every person present tonight, this afternoon, in the common cause of how do we fix this world. The question that Sam Shoemaker once asked in a sermon, his last sermon in his church in Pittsburgh, was entitled, "Can our kind of church fix our kind of world?" And that's a question in the sermon that literally can wash through every one of us. Can our kind of organization, can our kind of people, can our kind of institution fix our kind of world? Because we must be guided by that purpose that must infuse every one of our lives and animate our lives to live our lives in that particular way. So here I am, a journeyman pastor out in Hereford, Texas, and if you think that sounds like cows, you've got it right. In Hereford, Texas, 45 miles southwest of Amarillo, Texas, and all of my preaching, even though I kept saying, you know, we have to change this world, but all of my preaching was a lot like the way I hunted. I would take my gun and there would be a loud report and there'd be a lot of smoke, but nothing fell, no game fell. And the animals enjoyed it just as much as I did. And so I was at a place in my life to say, what good are we doing? Because I will preach my heart out and all of our folks will go forth, which I never figured out where that was. And then they would come back and we'd do the same thing over and over again, forth and back and forth and back, and romp and stomp. And everyone enjoyed themselves, but nothing was being changed in the world. And so I had the incredible, great fortune of being trained in pastoral psychology by one of the three founders of the entire discipline. It was not a discipline of pastoral psychology before my particular professor and two others literally started that discipline of pastoral psychology, which of course is in every seminary now, where we could be trained as counselors. We would be counseling, but largely until this point, we were untrained. And we were trained, you know, as physicians of relationships. And I'm not certain what pastors are supposed to be if they're not physicians of relationships. And so consequently, that was my deep training. And I probably had about 16,000 hours in the counseling chambers for individuals whose relationships would be so distraught and so broken it would break their lives. And with couples that would come in who were so apart from one another, they could barely look at each other and barely, of course, speak to each other. And when people whose lives were broken in their relationship with the source of all of their creation, and what that did to the human soul, and what that did to the human spirit, in the brokenness that we witnessed. And one of the things that was so critical for us to learn is that human relationships have rules. We don't think about that much because we're so involved in our feelings, but human relationships have rules that are just as ineluctable as the laws of gravity. And if you obey those rules, then you will grow in your relationships. One of the rules is we always form relationships not based upon how different we are. You never can take the entrance to a path of unity with the entrance of diversity. You always come together as human beings based upon what you share together in common. You grow that, and then in the midst of that, you celebrate your wonderful, incredible, unique diversity, that there is never going to be another you. There never has been another you. You are a unique, unrepeatable miracle of God. So here we are, well over 8 billion of us. And that's one of the rules. The other rule is there are certain things you must say and certain things you must not say. Certain things you have to do and certain things you must not do to maintain a relationship that is growing and vibrant and healthy. And of course, another rule is you're going to mess up and you're going to say stupid things and we're going to do stupid things. And so you have to confess that. That's another rule. Then you have to forgive and you invest your life once again in those things that you share in common. So what does this have to do with the world? What does this have to do in a pastor's study with the smell of cattle all over the air, even 6,000 feet up? People would tell me they'd fly over Hereford, Texas, with 3 million cattle on feed out there, and they could close their eyes and say, we're over Hereford. What difference does this make? Haven't you ever felt that, honestly? You know, we're working, we're striving, we're conferencing, we're discovering truths. But what difference does it make when we are in the midst of massive forces that seem to control all that we are? Oh Lord, thy sea is so great and my boat is so small. And it has a deadening effect on that critical factor that we must have, which is human hope. And so here I am counseling, seeing unbelievable miracles. Also young adults starting out their life together. And they'd come in, they'd be so in love, they were psychotic. And they would be looking at each other and goo-goo in their eyes, and it just kind of makes you sick, you know. And here they are, and they're sitting there together, and I would always say to them, now I've got good news for you and bad news, and here's the good news. If you follow God's rules for relationships, the two of you will become one. Invariably, they'd snake their hands out and hold hands together. Boy, that's great news. And here's the bad news. The bad news is we're going to spend a lifetime struggling and wrestling to see which one of you, the two of you, become. And I would always want to jump over my desk and grab the young man and say, give up right now. Save yourself years of struggle. And so here, knowing the rules of relationship, watching so many broken families and so many broken folks being utterly healed through obeying the rules of love. And it was on October the 27th, 1981, 43 years ago, 43 years, uphills and downhills and washouts in the spring, 43 years, and it seems like yesterday. My mentor, D. Elton Trueblood, sent me a box of a 12-volume work called A Study of History by Arnold Toynbee. And the box was made out of cardboard, but the books were made out of the things that dreams are made of. And what Toynbee did is Toynbee took and said, we have to make a science of civilization itself. He said, it's like when fish are born, they don't think about the ocean, they just start swimming. When we're born into a fixed society that's already extant, we don't really think about it. We just do our deal. We grow up, we go to school, we get our degrees, we work. We don't think about, what is it? What is this ether that we're moving through that we call civilization and cities, etc.? We just go to work. And yet we're so surprised when what Toynbee had found out when he studied 28 of the major civilizations that have marched across our globe, that 27 of them had started and grew and flourished and then began to decay and decline and collapse. Cyclically, 27 of the major civilizations were the 28th. And arguably, we have begun the collapse phase. Some are pinpointing it as early as 1968. And then Toynbee not only did that in the comparative contrast of that, beginning in the 1930s and going up to the 1960s. In the third volume, Toynbee actually defined civilization. And when I read those words about 7:30 p.m. in my study on October the 27th, 1981, I stood straight up. I just stood straight up. And I went, my gosh, if that's true, we can heal this world. And that got in my bones and in my blood that went all the way down. And what did Toynbee say? Toynbee said something so strikingly simple. He said, society, civilization, is a system of relationships. A system of relationships. You do have the molecular, but you also have the molecular, just like H2O, in a whole swimming pool. And we have to know what can heal our basic relationships, but we've got to move from that because we can't all just jump in the pool as nonprofits or government agencies and madly scramble and scrape and cleanse molecules and then throw them back out because the pool isn't getting cleaner regardless of how our statistics seem to go up and up and up. As a preacher, last year we had 50 baptisms, this year 100 baptisms, and yet the pool's not getting clean. And it dawned on me, I know the molecular. If we can move from the molecular and put those truths into an applicable system that can be put into a city and turned on and rebuild the relationship foundation, because if it's a system, and I've added positive relationships because negative relationships can kill you, a system of positive relationships, then we can literally continue to go and begin to leaven the entire world. And so that's why I left our church after it took me 9 years to figure out, church, wonderful people, but they didn't sign on to change the world. They signed on to be church members. And I was only 9 years learning that. That's the kind of dodo you got up here. And so consequently, we moved to Shreveport and began to say, how do we put this system in operation? What do we share together in common? As human beings, we share together in common the capacity to care for each other. We are hardwired to care for each other. And then we've got to take everyone in the pool everyone. And I have folks, if you're a human being breathing air, you're in. And we formed what we call the We Care team. And that is to make 3 decisions. I will care for each and every and all human beings. I realize I can't change the world by myself. So I will join together with every other person who will care for all human beings. And then we will share that and march that out into the world. That's one pillar. The second is we have to do it door to door, next door in our neighborhood. When I grew up, I knew everybody lived on my street. They all knew me. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to be 80 years old soon. And when we've lived as long as I've lived, you have made terrible, terrible, terrible misjudgments and mistakes. But I have never so radically miscalculated as when I told Miss Parker, you can't spank me. You're not my mama. And Miss Parker spanked the fire out of me. And I remember crying and telling her, I'm going to tell my mama what you did. And Miss Parker said, good, Mackie, because I'm going to tell your mama what you did. And I remember thinking, there's a conspiracy here of all the adults that live around me. And that neighborhood was connected. Now we can email people all over the world. We don't know who's living and dying. 4 apartment doors down, 4 houses down. We've gotten disconnected, and that disconnection brings on its weight dysfunction. That's the second strategy. We call it We Care Neighbors, and we've trained 2,500 of those folks in Shreveport now. We're halfway through the city, making connections and bringing them together. Our motto is, we're remaking our city by making friends on our street and helping them to know one another systematically. And the third is, it's called our Friendship House. How do we help brothers and sisters in high crime, high poverty areas? And we have remarkable human beings, and we take 40 city blocks and we move 2 families in that we've trained to live and begin to leaven the areas in which we live. And with that, all of the folks come together. And so here is what the preacher said, no matter where you start, you cut across country and you get to Jesus as fast as you can. And thanks to Michael for this morning reminding us that at the heart of what we are, no ethic matters unless we're devoted to that hope that he had, that all of the world would be one family, that we would have Abba, and therefore you are my brother, you are my sister. And so consequently, here we are. Here we are. All Jesus said when they were in the darkest of dark days, they were an occupied country. The massive was all around them. And Jesus says to his folks, fear not, little flock. It's your Father's good pleasure to give you the gift of the kingdom. And he said, the kingdom is like the smallest seed. But once it's planted, that's key. How do we plant it? It grows to become the largest bush. And then all of the institutions and organizations and all the people make their home in that. I'm reminded in these times when Longfellow wrote The Builders, when he said, sail on, O ship of state. Sail on, O Union, strong and great. Humanity, with all its fears and all its hopes for future years, is hanging breathless on thy fate. We feel that. But know this, it's never the massive that wins in history. It's always the vital. And I sat out there today and saw incredible vitality. And it fills me with hope. Thank you, Michael. It utterly fills me with hope. And so I would say with our Lord, that we must do the works of him who sent us while it is day. The night cometh when no one can work, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. God bless each one of you as we go forth. Amen.